Well, take a break from coding. I'm glad to hear that that's working out. I hope you're getting the idea of co-coding. Megan reminded me during the break that we had a flag in our schedule to launch the final assessment. So there are two assessments in this module. One is the problem sets, which we talked about this morning, and we know that the problem sets are due on the 11th of December, Thursday, 3 p.m. And I'm just going to share my screen here with you, and I'm going to go to the useful links link. And actually, before I do that, I'm on the useful links page of our website here, which I'll just drop in chat in case it's useful for anyone. Down at the very bottom is, well, let's call this a useful link. It's a link to the so-called virtual learning environment. Some people at Harper call it Moodle. Some people call it the Hub. I'm just going to open that real quick. You'll have to log in if you want to go to this. What's the link? If I look at, I'm not going to click on participants because I don't want to call anybody out, but if you've never gone to this page before, I don't know if that accounts for anyone here, but I want to ask, is there anyone here? Put a 1 in the chat if you have gone to this Harper webpage before. Put a 0 if you've never gone to it before. So I'm going to wait until I have 6 answers. I won't speak again until there's 6 answers. If there's any technical problem, we're going to wait till every person gets in chat. And it looks like some people have and some people haven't. And all of the learning materials are on my website that I made for this module. And but actually, I'd like everyone who hasn't done it to just go ahead and follow. I'll give the link again. Go ahead and follow that link. You'll have to log in with your Harper username and password for the first time. And I need everybody to log into that. So, Megan, I'm going to ask you to help the guys that haven't logged in yet successfully log in for the first time, because we're all going to need to be in there before I do this next part. I'm just going to give you 5 minutes. I think everybody's logged in now. Okay, that's good. All right, let's continue then. So if you have logged in, and if you're following, you don't need to follow what I'm about to do, just listen, but also know that the link to this, to get back to it easily, is on our useful links page. And there are just a couple of links on this page. And I know other modules may have more stuff on there, but I've got everything in a place that I can completely control and which requires no login. If you have any thoughts on whether you like that or prefer it, let us know. Let me know in chat now, or let me know in Discord, or if you would prefer the stuff to be all here on the hub, let us know that as well. I would love to hear any feedback if you have some, and if you don't, that's fine too. But the only links that I have on here at the moment are administrative links. Thanks, Mel. They're administrative links that the university requires to have on the hub site. And part of the function of the hub site is to give students resources, unless there's an external resource. But part of the function of it is to provide administrative documents for administration, not by the module leader, but by other people at the university. So what I have on here is the minimum links that are required by the administrators. And really, these are not for students. Students can access them. You can look at them, but they're in administrative language, and they're not. I would certainly put all of this. I would and have put this information in a very different form when I intend students to consume it. Nevertheless, one of the ones we're going to talk about I'll just go through the links that I do have. One is the link to our module page. One is the link that has a technical, formal description of what this module is all about. Feel free to look at it. It may be of interest to you, but I cover all of this stuff in a different format, a student-facing, student-friendly format in the website. Two of these are formal administrative descriptions of the assessments. We've spent a lot of time talking about the problem sets. But, if you're interested, look at what the administrators want to feed upon and look at the form that they require. The one we're going to look through today together, I believe we did look at the problem set form in the past, but we are going to look at the project form today, and I'm going to tell you the dates for the project, which is the last assessment for this module. Megan reminded me that it was due to be launched, so we're going to do that today. And then the scheme of work is also an administrative-facing document, but you can look at it too. That basically has a very, very brief outline of our schedule. Okay, so we're going to look at the assessment project document. And it will look like this if you open it up. You'll see that, technical information about the module. You'll see the title of this particular assignment. You'll see the type of the assignment. And in this case, the type of the assignment is a group assignment. That means that group work is, it's possible, but it's not required for this. And so one of the things I'm going to do is explain that to you and explain what is required here. The time guide for the investment in the project is about 50 hours. Really, because it's a group assignment, and I'll explain this more in just a sec, it should be 50 plus. I'll explain that in a second. But a minimum of about 50 hours, a maximum per student of about 50 hours. But for a group project with more than one person, I think 50 hours is fair, counting the effort everybody puts in at a minimum. There's no applicable word page or limit for this. What you're going to turn in is going to be a GitHub repository that may contain C, may contain SQL, may contain Python, but it's going to culminate in a working application, like a web app or some other kind of application that you create. Could be a command line app, but I'd expect most people would probably want to make something more polished, utilizing some of the tools we talk about in the very end of the course for this. We have a formal account of the module outcomes. You can read through those. I think it's pretty straightforward. I'll let you read it in the whole time. And if you do have any questions, if you do want to look at this later on or now, feel free to interject them into the chat, no problem. Now, the deadline for this project is going to be there'll be a GitHub link. You need to turn it in via a repo, just like we turn in the problem set. So that part will be familiar. And the deadline is the 22nd of January. And guess what day and time? I picked the week of the 22nd of January. Thursday, 3 p.m. was picked by the university. Having a UI is not necessarily a requirement. But having said that, most people would probably choose to have some kind of UI via a web page or something. But it's not a requirement by any stretch. There's some AI guidance. I'm not going to go through this again because I've talked about it quite a lot. There's a submission declaration, and then there's a brief project outline. So I'm just going to read this for you one sentence at a time, and then I'll unpack it and explain it for you and field questions if you have some. Now, the final project is intended to offer students the opportunity to apply the programming skills that you've picked up in this module. All right. And what you're going to do with those skills is you're going to develop your own software solution. Solution to what? Well, the the solution is to a problem that you conceive, that you identify, that you articulate, and the solution is going to be a solution that you design. It's going to be user-facing considerations in the design of your solution. So, in partial answer to the question about whether a UI is a requirement, if somebody were to make me a little program that solved some problem that I have and it was a command line program, no problem. But if it doesn't have a UI, and we will be going through the creation of a UI using HTML a little bit later in this course, you're going to limit the users you're targeting. So if you can justify not having a UI and it's a good solution, no problem whatsoever. But most people, like I said, would want a UI. And it all depends on the problem you choose to solve. Now, creativity and innovation. It says this project encourages creativity and innovation. Well, I hope that you find creativity fun. You can think of, literally, you can think of any problem you want under the sun and aim this project at it. With the caveats that you want to pick something that's feasible. You want to leave the programming that we've covered to that which is covered by this module, even if there's some other much better solution that you've learned somewhere else. I'm going to ask you to leave the solution that you choose for this problem that you pitch to ones that we cover in this class. So that's going to be, you're free to choose any programming language to build the application, but it's going to be restricted to the HTML, C, could even theoretically be Scratch. Most people would not choose Scratch to this. Is that, but I haven't heard the pitches yet. SQL, Python, the Flask framework for websites that we'll cover later in the module, and so forth. Now, the application should be meaningful to the group. It should solve a real-world problem, and it should potentially impact, a much bigger group of users. Let's think ambitiously here. It could impact your community that you live in or the community you come from. Could impact some issue in Britain or another country. Could impact the world. So I'm going to leave this up to you. It could be a public-facing general interest solution to a problem that almost anybody will face, or it could be something that's specific to a community, even a neighborhood. You can, but because it's a group project, you want to be able to draw on. Everybody in the group should be able to recognize this as a let's call it a legitimate problem, a meaningful problem. Okay, and I mean that's not a technical requirement of this project. It's a practical requirement because everybody's going to contribute to the solution. So you're going to want everybody to be engaged. Now, you have the option here of working individually, but I hope none of you choose this. I hope every person chooses a group project for this. 1, it'll be more fun. 2, it'll be a better project. In my experience, there's almost no exception to this in my entire career where there's been a group project run where there's the option of doing it alone. And I understand the tendency to say, yeah, I want to do this myself. I want to control my own time. I want to, maybe I think I would come up with the best solution, or maybe I have a solution that I'm not sure other people would recognize as the best solution. But you gotta leave that ego and uncertainty stuff behind. A big thing I want you to get out of this class with the co-coding and with this project is I want you to learn to communicate to other people and work with them. This is a thing that will make you be really good at whatever job you end up doing. And I want to see it in these projects. So I'm not going to force you to work individually, but I hope none of you do that. And you can collaborate with up to 2 other classmates. So I'd encourage you to find 1 or 2 other people. 3 is the perfect size. Is you have more than just if you only have 2 people, one will tend to dominate the other. If you have 3 people, it tends to balance that out and break it up. Can't have any bigger than that. So don't bother asking. There won't be any project groups bigger than 3. And so you can pick 1, 2, or 3. Now the expectation here is that every member is going to contribute equally. That's going to be, a challenge. It's going to require communication and collaboration. It's going to be, typically it would require a set time every week where you guys come together and you work on your project, starting very soon. And I'll come up with I'll share with you some dates in just a second that are milestones. I don't expect anybody to start their projects, certainly not laying down any code, for a couple of weeks at least, and probably not until we get through the last part of the module where we start working with HTML, after we start working with Python and SQL. Because for those of you who are less experienced in learning this stuff for the first time, or maybe relearning it, you're going to need that to get the creative juices flowing. The complexity, and this is a real key one, the complexity of the project should reflect the size of the group. So, if it is a singleton kind of project, I don't expect you to spend 150 hours of effort on this thing. But if there are 3 people, I'm going to expect 3 people to have done a good amount of work on this stuff. So, will it be 3 times as complex? No, probably not, as something a singleton project would do. But I do expect that to scale. So you will be judged and graded depending on the ambition and the complexity that's built into your project solution. So if you got 3 people, you need to engineer, just like any real world project. This has very explicitly and on purpose elements of and every assessment through most of the modules in this whole course will be like this, as close to a real world problem as we can. You need to start practicing this stuff as early as you can. This is applied data science. So it's realistic that you work with other people in a team. You have to give those other people room to work, and you have to design the project construction in such a way that that work can be delegated. There is some work for each person to do. There should never be a point in any project. This would be a real warning flag. I hate to use a sports metaphor, but I just use one. It would be a real warning flag if you find yourself in a situation where you have a group meeting and you say, right, we were going to do this thing and we need to really make some progress before next week. And so Alice is going to do this big thing next week and present it to the group, and then everybody else will start pitching in. Should never be like that. Every group meeting should result in some actions for every member of the group. Okay, I'm not going to elaborate on that anymore at the moment, but if anybody has any questions after I finish, let's discuss them. Now the final project will be based on the ambition of the project and the nature of the solution. How much ingenuity went into this. So let me just give you an example of, this is an extreme and almost laughable example. But what if you had a problem that was to, convert a URL for the web into a QR code that you could scan. This is a pretty simple problem. There are lots of existing solutions to it. I'm not expecting anybody to make the next Facebook or anything for this, but it has to have a little more ambition for a real problem that people have. And on the other hand, I just said I don't expect anybody to make the next Facebook. I said I remember that I said that the scope of the solution should be contained within the tools that we've used and introduced in this module. So I don't expect any, for example, I don't expect any cloud hosting. I don't expect any complex database stuff. I don't expect, anything that's beyond the scope of the module, basically. So you don't want to pick a problem that's too ambitious, and you will have a chance to get feedback on your project. You have 2 opportunities to get feedback before you have to turn it in. So, we start the conversation today about this assessment, but we won't finish the conversation until well in advance of the deadline at the end of this term. Okay, and I'll go through when you're going to get some feedback directly. And we'll also be looking at the effectiveness and the efficiency of the code that you submit, and the creativity. You get a lot of points for a creative solution to a real problem. That's really what I want you to do, is to think about that, communicate with each other, and submit something reasonable. We'll all be laughing if you can do that. All right. There needs to be some assessment, and I'll give you details on this well in advance of having to act on it. But you'll need to self-assess on the individual contributions. So part of the project submission for all groups will be to assess the steps that you did, and for groups of more than one, to report back on who did which steps and how much you contributed to them, say proportionally. All right, and the last line just reiterates that the group size can be 1, 2, or 3. Now, I'm not prescribing. I will give you a little information and some examples of other projects that would be good solutions to this within the next few weeks that I'll put up on our website, and I'll make sure and I'll let you know when I do that. But I think that's all the information about the assessment on here. But feel free to look through the rest of this. There are marking criteria on here. They're very generic. They're one of the marking schemes that the university has as a default, and it's really not relevant for word count here. There's some generic submission recommendations. There is a generic assignment return, which you will actually get feedback, written feedback, via GitHub, probably via your README on the GitHub repo that you turn back in. I need to think of a solution to get back feedback to the group, because a technical point, which I'll give full instructions to, like I said, within the next few weeks, is that only one person from the group will submit a repo for the assessment, identifying the other members of the group. Of course, you would already have identified those, so we would already know that. And I will either set up the repo in such a way that your group members are all have access to the repo, or it'll just be the one designated person to sign it in. I haven't quite decided yet, and it depends. I prefer the first solution where I add everybody as an admin. I just have to make sure I can do that in Classroom, in Google Classroom. GitHub Classroom. Okay, so that's the timeline. The only other information is that the grades will be returned within 4 weeks, but usually we'd return them faster than that. At least my personal goal is to return them faster than that. So you can look over this as you see fit. But I wanted to point out on the schedule that I've just added a couple of little points of detail. We're here today. So there's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to the 7th week. And on the 7th week, this is the 11th of November, what we'll do in class on that day is we will, you'll present your group members, and you'll present your title of your project. And if you have any questions or anything that day, you probably want to verbally, no presentation at all on this time. This is just verbal. You will probably at that time pitch maybe an outline of what you think the problem is and just a very, very brief account of what your solution is, just enough to make the title make sense. So this is going to be very short, 3 minutes. What you'll need to do to prepare for the 7th week is you'll need to pick your group members, decide on what size group you have, and find the members to populate it. And you'll need to have discussed what the problems are and come to some agreement all together for what the title is, and just the briefest of descriptions about what your problem and solution is. And I'm going to stick really hard to this, just a few minutes max. Now on the 11th week, this is December 3rd, we have a wrap-up meeting, and there's not going to be much going on in that week. We don't have any more problem sets to do. And so we're going to have a full project pitch here, and we're going to have a little fun with it. It's going to be Dragon's Den style. Megan and me, and if Joseph Mahengo is available, you'll have 3 dragons. And you're going to pitch your project, pitch the problem, tell us how you're going to solve it and make the world a better place. And for both of these times, you get feedback from us. I like this about it. I'm concerned about this. How are you going to address it? So you'll get detailed feedback, especially in this wrap-up meeting when it's a longer pitch. So we expect some technical detail of the pitch here. So where it's up here, it's 3 minutes. We'll probably have about a 10-minute polished pitch here. Now, I mentioned the due date is in January, and I mentioned that I would post up some details, little details and some example projects in a couple of weeks. And that's all I have to say about that right now. Megan, do you have anything to add, or is there anything that I've forgotten or left out? Also, if there are any questions, let's go ahead and address any questions that people have this second. So put them in the chat if you've got them. Okay. I know you're still getting to know the other people on your course. I know we're on 2 courses here. There's some engineers and some data science folks here. I'd encourage everybody to think outside the box and really mix it up. And a thing I want to do with these co-coding groups is, we've picked a group today. Let's pick a different group next week. And, I would expect people to, after next week, maybe wait then until you mix with a different group next week and interact with some different folks. To pick your groups. If you already have an idea and you've already been thinking about this, fine. But most people would probably do this after next week. Hopefully those other people will come back in. No, there's no guide on this. The length of your code, let me tell you, this is an excellent question. Man, I could talk about this for a really long time, but I'll try to constrain myself. One of the very strong patterns I've picked out in my career is that the length of writing has no correlation whatever at all to the quality of the writing. And the same thing goes for the code. I'm not expecting some number of functions or some number of code. As a matter of fact, the same thing goes for code as goes for writing. The shorter, the better, as long as it solves your problem. And it's usually harder to write it shorter. So it's that sort of famous quote that is ambiguously attributable to different people is that I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. And one that I like to say is a reference to the writer Ernest Hemingway. I'm not sure if you encounter them in the British school system, but Hemingway was known for writing very short sentences and very short novels that were absolutely packed with emotion and power and interesting stuff happening. And my preference would be your code be as short as possible to solve a problem in a clever way. So a bigger group would mean more complexity, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean 3 times the code. Any other questions? My advice basically is don't worry about that complexity thing. You'll get feedback on the complexity when you do your pitch and the title, and we can steer you, and there'll be plenty of time to steer your project in the right direction. And if you have any doubt about the complexity of your project, if you get to week 11, when you're ready for your project pitch, and you feel you've already finished your project and you're ready to demonstrate it, it's probably not complex enough. Maybe it is. Maybe you would have put that much time in between now and then, but I doubt it. Yes, there are some languages that you should use. You're going to want to stick to C. You're going to want to stick to Python. You're going to want to stick to SQL. You're going to want to stick to HTML. You're going to want to stick to the Flask framework. If you have any significant stuff outside of that, I don't expect there to be any JavaScript, for example. We don't cover that in this class. So it needs to be contained within this class. We're showcasing the tools you pick up in this class. Any other questions? Okay. Listen, there'll be time for questions every week. If you ever want to ask any questions, just ask them. Can we use things like EM scripting to turn C into WebAssembly to be used by HTML? Well, it would be, because we're not covering those automated tools in this class, I'm worried we could end up with something like that if one person has encountered automation tools and the rest of the group hasn't, and then you come up with a really complicated HTML that incorporates a lot of stuff we haven't included in this class. I'm worried you could get yourself into trouble doing that. If you're turning in C and C, there's this kind of phenomenon happening in education right now where, because of AI and because of other kinds of automation tools, these tools are really important for professionals to use. This question you ask weighs on me a lot because there's a lot of stuff happening and developing all at one time really fast. And as students, especially if you've had a little experience doing any kind of web development or computer science before you come here during your A-level or in other places, you probably would have encountered this stuff. And if you're on social media with any programming stuff, and we've talked about some popular YouTube channels, if you're consuming media like that, the media that's coming on your timeline, just like mine, is all these automation tools. Can you use a different compiler? Well, remember I said you need to turn it in via our code spaces, and I think I'd want to hear in your pitch your argument for why you need to use a different compiler than the one that's in the code spaces. I would want to hear your pitch as to why you need to do that, but I won't say no to that. But to finish my thought is that you have to use these automation tools. We all do, and they're just coming at us. Automation tools up to and including AI. But I've already gone over all the reasons why, even though AI is great, I love it. I use it a lot for real projects every day myself, and so will you guys. At the moment, universities haven't really caught up with that. And the nature of this course is such that we have some folks that don't have the basics of programming. And the topic of my talk yesterday about using AI to do data analysis basically said that, to do data analysis, I'll come back to the web page solution for this project, but here's an example that analogizes it perfectly, in my opinion. I made the argument that to be effective at data analysis, you need to know a lot about using best practice code and tools, let's say within the R ecosystem or Python or whatever tool set you want to use. You need to know about that and know what tools there are and know how to use them correctly. But you also need basic statistical knowledge that can translate what you want to learn as a scientist into the creation of information from data. So you have to actually know quite a lot about statistics. Now, AI can do both of those things, but if you're really lacking in one or the other, if you can't articulate your problem in statistical language, it's really hard to get the correct code from AI. And if you use automation tools, I'm not saying that using a compiler tool chain is like this, but for example, if you do use automation tools naively, you get yourself into trouble. I think that's my main point, and that's all I have to say about that. If you explain to us during your pitch what your tool chain is, what your tool set is, and you justify it, no problem. Anything else? I've got an eye on the time. I've already spoken much longer than I thought I would about our project. And I know it's a bit like opening a can of worms, or possibly more like opening Pandora's box whenever we talk about an assessment, because it creates tension and people have a lot of questions, usually very good questions like we've asked in here so far. Just know that we keep this conversation open. What I suggest is I'll make sure that Megan and I remember that next week. Megan, when I'm not here, can remember to field any questions about the assessment. And I'll be back on week 6, the week before the project pitch, to do that. If there's any way I can attend the project pitch on week 7, I will, but I may not be able to. Just realized that. But that is the date for the formative feedback for this assessment for Megan's benefit. And maybe we'll shift that because of that, because I would like to see your pitches and titles and be able to feedback. So maybe I'll push that back to the week 8. In fact, I think I just decided that I will do that for week 8. And likewise, I need to keep an eye on week 11, because if I'm yeah, I mean, I want to do it just because I'm eager to see the project titles, but yeah, I get you. For visualization, I'd need to understand your project, what the problem and solution is more to really answer that. But this isn't an advanced visualization course. It's not even a data viz course. Although if you had a database problem, I'd be elated if somebody wanted to tackle a database problem. But it's not really what it's about. It's more about applying the basic tool sets we have and combining them to solve a problem. So don't worry about the visualization. But if you do have an idea that involves a visualization, I need to understand the problem more. So pitch it, or when you get your group together, we can explore this. Okay, I've just got one eye on the time here. We've got a little less than 20 minutes left, What I'm tempted to do is to go back to the co-coding to close it off and let everybody get as much done as they can in the time, and maybe even make a plan to continue it. Any other questions or concerns at this time? All right. I'll put this up as a video just like the others, probably part 1 and part 2 for the live for today, a little bit later. And the second one has been all about the assessment, so you can watch it again later, and hopefully it'll also be useful to the students that aren't in class. If you know of anybody that is having trouble making it to class, please let them know to drop me a line. If there's any problem, I need to know about it, because we're now on our 4th weekend, and there are some people that are on the roster and haven't attended yet, and there are a few people that have missed a few days, and we're on the verge of having to do something about that. So please, if you are in contact with anybody who is having a trouble, or just drop me a line and let me know that they're out there, and I'll offer any help I can to get them in class before the university decides they have to do something about non-attendance. So if people haven't come and they haven't engaged, we don't have any record of them engaging, some automatic flags will be tripped. So if anybody does know people like that, please let them know to contact me. I've sent a few emails now and asked for people to contact me, but we just haven't seen quite a few people yet. For those of you that have been coming, I'm really pleased with the progress, with the activity in Discord, and I love the questions you're asking. I can see what you're thinking and how you're thinking. Love it. So let's keep it up, and I'll see you in Discord before we meet again. Any final thoughts or anything before I go, Megan or anybody? If there's not, I'm going to end the stream. Megan, I'm available in the green app if you need anything, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good afternoon.